I mean, I think the main thing is if I've helped guide or I've helped something happen to somebody that they really wanted to happen, or given opportunity. Opportunity is the word. I think you can't change people's lives, but you can put them in the right place at the right time.
Julie, so great to meet you.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to talk to you. I've read a little bit about your career and as a dancer, and also this wonderful grad pro project or program that you're doing, and I would love to know more.
Okay.
But I first want to start with your own ballet career. You have a fantastic. You were a dancer at the Royal Ballet, and wonderful.
Yeah. It's sort of all started from being an only child, to be honest. My parents, well, they only had me, and Mum thought it was really good for me to sort of have somewhere to go to mix with other children. So that's really where it started. Actually, I was 2.5 when I started.
Wow.
And that was a very small school near here in Stoke-on-Trent. And I don't ever remember not doing it, to be honest.
Oh, really? But did you show interest in ballet? I mean, were you a dancing child?
I think so, yes. I think because I'd started so early, it was just part of my everyday thing. And I remember going to sort of start primary school and having this group of friends at primary school, and then this group of friends at ballet school. And there were 4 of us, all the same age, and we all had surnames beginning with B. And they used to call us the 4 Bs. And I'm actually still in touch with 2 of them, actually. Mm-hmm. It's quite funny. Those kind of friendships actually do last a very long time. So
yeah, no, that's true. I've thought about that a lot, how close dancers are, how these friendships are just also different. They're very physical. Dancers, I find, is very huggy and touchy and physical, and I think it comes with the dance, with always dancing together and the physical touch.
I think also that it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't feel that artistry. If it's in you and somebody has it as well, it's almost like you're joined. It's like a connection, and it's inexplainable, but when it's there, it's quite something. I think probably I can generally say, although I've been in working with dance my whole life, my very, very best friends are those that I've got through dance. Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's that bond that I know everything, that type of thing.
Yes, you can't hide anything from me. Yeah.
It's almost those friendships. If what to say, it's like if you're not my friend anymore, I'll have to kill you or something because you know too much.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I to be honest, my husband is a sculptor by it's by hobby, and has actually done a lot recently and ended up exhibiting in the Biennale in Venice, which has been incredible. And I think although he doesn't actually really get ballet, he understands the passion and need to be involved, because that's the makeup of it also. Yeah.
So did you go through the sort of normal route, the ballet school and then ballet dancer?
I did. I had a bit of a what's it called, the word blip at quite an early age, because I desperately wanted to go to White Lodge, as did everybody who was wanting. And I went to an audition. It was in a very dodgy area of Manchester called the Zion, Institute. Those who know. I, a week later, didn't even get a second audition. I was basically told in a letter that I would never make a classical dancer.
Mm.
So I just thought, okay, and I don't really remember very much about it. Just thought, well, that's not going to stop me. And my parents had suggested that I audition for Elmhurst. So I went off to Elmhurst in Camberley at a very young 11, because I'm a July birthday, and arrived there with my trunk and my beret and my little suit. But actually, I would say that everything that's come since was because I did that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, boarding school's not easy. It had its times, it had its good times. But I think I really realized that I wanted to be a dancer and didn't really look sideways at all. I was just focusing. And I did really well at Elmhurst. I enjoyed it. Had one rebellious moment when I went into London with a group of people to audition for Pan's People when I wasn't supposed to.
Okay.
It was one of those days, and just a few little things like that. But generally, I wanted to be. I would set my eyes on Royal Ballet. In fact, I don't really think I ever thought. I was just quite focused, and then dealt with the knocks as I went up, if that makes sense. So when I won an award in 1981 that was called the Paul Clark Award, and it was named after a dancer at that time London Festival Ballet who died very tragically in the dentist chair from an anaesthetic.
Wow.
And Kerrison Clark, Kerrison Cook, I beg your pardon, Clark and Cook, he set up a sort of memorial fund, and I was the inaugural winner of that in 1981, and that actually enabled me to have some money to help with my Royal Ballet School fees, which was really, really something. And then I was at the Royal Ballet Upper School, and ironically, with the year I would have been at White Lodge, so all those people that I would have been with were now in my year at Royal Ballet School. So it swings and roundabouts. Yes,
but it's that aspiration to go to the upper school. It's almost that, and I understand that thing. That's where everybody wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, when I was auditioning, it's funny how I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's funny how there are always 3 schools or 4 that you are going to. And when I was training, it was either Rambert Academy, which was out in Twickenham, Rambert School, which was up at the Place, and the Royal Ballet School. And I did get places at all 3. I'm very, very lucky, but Royal was absolutely where I wanted to go. And actually, I had an absolute ball at the Royal Ballet. I absolutely loved it. Incredible teachers. Lived in the same bed sits as everybody else. Mrs. Wolfe, who was an amazing lady who had all these like flats that students. And I was very lucky. I went into the graduate class. I was in Mrs. Kilgore's class, she was just the most incredible Canadian teacher. And in the 3rd year, I actually no, that's wrong. Hang on a minute now. Started to work with the company quite a lot as a student, and was given the opportunity very early on. I ended up as number 7 in the Bayadere Corps de Ballet as a student, and Rudolf Nureyev actually picked me in class to go into that play, and I never moved from that place. Even when I got into the company, I was still number 7 when I left.
Really?
I was taught by Peter Sharpers' mum, Mona Bankstar, so got a lot of Bournonville, which was really good for technique and strength. and spent most of my sort of second year going to the Opera House to work with a company, which was amazing. Absolutely loved it. And then had the opportunity to go on a 9-week tour with the company as a student to America and Hong Kong, China, Japan.
Wow.
Korea. Yeah.
But that must have been, as a student, to be able to do that, that must have been amazing.
Was absolutely. And then when I came back, I settled back into school again. And then in the February of my third year, I got a contract with the company.
Wow.
And I was actually the only person in my year that got a contract with a company, even though the others had come through White Lodge. So it's not all of them have come through White Lodge, but the group.
Yeah, but doesn't it show you then that that was just your path? You know, that was just the way you had to go.
It was, yeah. I mean, I'm always one of those people as well, as when I'm told something like that I walk away and think someone needs to tell me that again because it hasn't gone in. And it was Lynn Wallace who actually told me I got the place, and for the whole weekend I kept thinking, did she say that? Have I? And
really,
I had to ring her back and say, can you just tell me again? So yes, that's and then I was basically with the company for 9 years.
Wow. But do you think, you know, as when you were younger and you didn't get into White Lodge, do you think, you know, the young girls are so fixed on you have to be at White Lodge to be able to have a career in ballet, or you have to do this to be able to have a career in ballet, but that, you know, that everyone has their own place, and everybody has to maybe be at a different teacher or a different environment to be able to become the artist that they're going to be?
I think yes, and unfortunately, you only see this in hindsight. I mean, I can probably say to you that what I've learned since has helped me with Grad Pro. So it's, I mean, I had, to be fair, I was very lucky compared to what these students and graduates have. I mean, they have better training, they have better dance science, but there are so few jobs. So it's hard for them. I just remember wanting to get everything out of the whole experience. And I was always very much, I've never been blinkered. I've always looked around. And one of the best things at the Opera House was getting to know the lighting people and getting to know the stage management, and when knowing how the sound department worked, and knowing that the whole thing was a team and a family. And I think that's really important, because if you go in there thinking the dancers are the only thing, then, well, that's just not true, because without everybody else, you just wouldn't have a job and you wouldn't have a production. And we had several times we worked with the opera in Prince Eagle, and a couple of galas. The best ever was the Queen's 60th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And we had a massive gala on the Opera House stage, which she attended. And it wasn't just dancers, it was lots and lots of different people. And Ian McKellen, RAD, and Judy Dench was there, and Placido Domingo, Pavarotti. It was the most amazing evening. And we danced a piece from Sylvia, like a quarter ballet piece at the end. And it was all filmed. I've still got it.
Really?
And we went on stage for the finale. And I ended up, I didn't realize at the time, but I was in between Judy Dench and Ian McKellen as I took a bow, centre of the Opera House stage. And I remember my parents, when they saw it, they said they both love both of them. And they said, see me there. And I'm beaming.
Oh,
it was just, you know, the whole.
Yeah.
It was. And we had, there was like a memento that year of, we have these like silver they weren't silver, they were like silk programs, and there was only 60 of them actually produced for her birthday, and I have one. I am
amazing.
Yeah, so I have something like number 32 out of 60. So
wow, but isn't it amazing? All these little things, it comes with the job, you can say. You have to treasure all these little moments that you had.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think we did it. The other really wonderful thing when I was dancing is we had lots and lots of international tours. The money these days, there's no, the companies tour very, very little now. And I've had the real privilege of visiting many beautiful places and being able to dance there as well, which was incredible. I mean, we went to China in 1983. So that was the year before Tiananmen Square. So you can imagine a whole lot different to what it is now. So yeah, real privilege.
But you're mentioning now about you understanding that it's a team and that, you had to understand also all the different jobs there. And I've recently spoken to a dance company in Tanzania, Muda Africa, and they actually they don't, they do this with the dancers also, that they give them the opportunity to do some lighting and to, they teach all these different aspects. And because they think, that some of the dancers might be interested in doing that as well. But don't you think that this is such an amazing thing that young dancers also have to, I mean, not that I say they have to learn to do it, but just be made aware of this teamwork, around them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the two words are transferable skills. And I think COVID has made people realize that you can't just stick to one path, because that pandemic threw everybody. We had ex-dancers going into bricklaying. We had people just had to make it work. I mean, obviously, when I talk about grad pro properly, the biggest thing for me is that the grads need to be open-minded and need to know that there are other paths, other options, because the worst thing when you come out of the company, and nobody can deny that they have this feeling, you have this transition period, which is actually incredibly mentally difficult. And you can say, people say they agree. Well, I'm very skeptical, because I was very grounded, and I still found it really, really tough. You're living in a bubble. You're living in a world that isn't normal.
Yeah.
And you have to come into the normal world. Whichever way whichever door you knock on, you have to have that transition period to adjust. And I know that's normal with changing jobs and things, but it's quite tough.
Well, I understand a little of it, because my daughter was a dancer, professional ballet dancer, and she transitioned into the real world, as we say it like this. But at one point, it was difficult for her, because all she wanted was, all she ever thought about was to dance. Like you said, that was just the thing. And unfortunately for her, she had to retire earlier than she wanted to. But it was suddenly that mind switch of, okay, all I thought of ever doing was dancing. So what now? Now I have to refocus and find something else to do. And that for her was very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually think dancers always have this severe lack of confidence. Well, I say dancers, possibly, I think, going to get very controversial here. I think more female dancers have very little confidence. And I think, everyone thinks, oh, you must be confident, you're in the company, you've done this, but actually that's not it. What makes you go on that stage is the adrenaline, the anxiety, the wanting to do it, get it right. That's what gets you on there. And I think, I mean, for me personally, when I decided to stop dancing, I always wanted to leave before I couldn't do it. There was no way I was going to stay there until someone told me to walk out the door. I wanted to leave at an age where I could. I always wanted to do a degree, and I decided I was going to do that. So I left at 28, and I went back up. Well, came back up here, and did a international history and American studies degree. And that's the closest to getting grounded I could come, I think.
Really? But it sounds so worlds apart from what you know.
Well,
yeah.
I sort of did it slowly as well. I realized that you couldn't just switch it. So my international history degree, I did a dissertation on Diaghilev and the Ballet Russe. And
okay. Yeah, okay, I understand.
Yeah, it was amazing because James Monaghan, who was my director, arranged for me to go to Dame Nanette's flat in West London, and I went and had tea with her and
wow.
And it was amazing. She was incredible. She was talking about Sir Fred and his whiskey, and she talked about Dame Alicia being for lunch and all this kind of thing. And then my American Studies degree, I did a dissertation on Isadora Duncan. So I still was able to connect. And I started to do some teaching at that point as well, because I figured, I never really wanted to teach. I felt there was something else that was there for me, but it was good to start to sort of give back. So my 4 years as a university mature student probably grounded me.
But did your body get used to it? Because I think this is, if I think of my daughter, this is the body thing. The body almost wants to move and wants to be this active, and
that's a really interesting one. And I've funny enough, COVID made me think about that a lot. When I stopped, I've always been very active. I don't, I just naturally am. I don't think I certainly generally didn't miss the stage or anything like that, because I did start to do some choreography at Northern Ballet School, and I was teaching students and they were responding and they were doing my choreography. I actually did a piece for the RAD's 50th anniversary. My goodness me, that can't be right, because it makes me sound really old.
Yeah.
No, I think it was the 75th. Let's try that one.
Okay.
And then I sort of got that sort of feeling back by watching them on the stage, and then I'd go on and do a curtsy at the end, which is fine. I was all right. But I think genuinely I didn't realize that my body was missing it until, and this is a long time after, in COVID, I'd started doing a very good friend of mine, Louise. She did lots and lots of classes on Zoom. I started to do bar every day during COVID, and my body suddenly said, thank goodness for that.
Really?
And I hadn't really noticed, but once my body remembered what it had been doing, it started to crave it. And actually, one thing I took up during COVID, I started doing indoor cycling, and I'm still doing it.
Really?
And actually, it's something I absolutely love for stress. But it was almost like that wake-up call, and my muscles. And I since do quite a lot of stretching and everything, and I actually feel better when I can feel when I've got control of my body. It's absolutely true. Yes.
Because you're so used to your body, so used to that, because you said since the age of 2.5, you've done that.
I even, it's silly, isn't it, that when our fire alarm sometimes goes off, my the thing, the smoke detector, my husband always says I look like I'm Dean Giselle. The arabesques with people. And actually, when we actually have e-bikes, so we've been cycling quite recently around, and he said every time I turn a corner, it's like I'm doing a full port de bras.
Oh, really?
He said you can just put your arm out; it doesn't have to go through first position. So yes, it is.
It's there. It's there. But Julie, now, so was this actually what made you think of the Grad Pro project?
So, I mean, just to skip through what went on before COVID, and then obviously I'll come on to Grad Pro. So basically, 1991 to 1995 were the sort of, when I did my degree, I started doing teaching at Northern, and I also was deputy head of dance at Hammond. So I got involved in vocational life and worked with students, which I was really enjoying. I loved doing the timetabling. I loved doing, choreography. And then I had two lovely children, two girls. And then really, we got sort of to 2000, and I started to think I'm going to get a job now. And I applied for the Royal Academy of Dance coordinator for the Midlands region. And it started off as a very small, basically organising exams. It got bigger, became a regional manager. I spent 14 years with the Royal Academy, and ended up running events in the Midlands for them, and absolutely loved it. Started the Dance Challenge, which is now still the precursor for the Genée, and really started to realise what I wanted to do. I think this is worth going through because it puts it in perspective.
No, please, it's so interesting, really. And the Genée, I know about the Genée competition, and it's quite a huge competition.
Well, when I started, I realised that the Genée was obviously for dancers who'd done their advanced 2, and there was a Phyllis Bedell's award for the dancers that had done their advanced 1. And I sort of thought, it'd be really nice to have like a progression.
Yeah.
So I started this Dance Challenge in 2010, and I think my actual belief at the time was that that if a student won at sort of the bottom level and then eventually won the Genée, and actually it did happen. So I was really, and also one of the very first winners has just done Romeo with Northern Ballet. It's really nice to sort of have that link. And I set up associate schemes. I set up an adult associate scheme. And realized that my strengths were working with people and actually giving back, because that's what it was. That made me feel good. And I've genuinely never done it because it's not an ego thing at all. I genuinely feel really warm inside when I've helped somebody. It really makes me happy. So.
But yeah, you went through the training and being a dancer, so you understand also a little bit of the psyche of the dancer. So, and that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's the same thing as you said before, with artists. If someone knows what you've done or they've gone through it as well, it's always easier to. And then in 2014, my husband said, I've got the chance to go to Canada to be a vice president for a company. And I was turning 50 that year, and I said, right, let's do it.
Oh, really?
So I spent the first year at home with my eldest daughter, Hannah, because she was doing her GCSEs and we couldn't move. And so Paul went over for a year, very hard, but we dealt with it. And then the following year, we moved over as a family. And actually really enjoyed it over there. I found it tough, and I really as well, because the girls were still at school, but they were old enough not to need me in the playground, so it was quite hard to gel. But I did some teaching. I worked at the RAD Canada office for a little bit, and then Paul got Well, basically, the company got taken over and our visa was taken away and we had to come back. And as I was
how long were you there for then?
well, he was there 2 years and we were there a year. So, yeah. Anyway, as we were coming back, we both faced the reasoning that neither of us had a job. And we were also limited to where we sort of moved over to because Hannah at that point was in the middle of a baccalaureate. So we had to move down to Wiltshire so she could go to one of the only schools, which was St John's in Marlborough, where she could finish her actual course. So I also noticed that the BBO were looking for an artistic director. And I said to Paul, I'm going to give it a go. Anyway, I got an interview and then we moved over and I got a second interview. And then I went and actually was made head of membership because they bought a ballet board at that time to be artistic director. So, and I then spent 8.5 years with the British Ballet Organisation, became CEO. And basically, when we got to COVID, I was pretty much the only person not furloughed. And I think I learned so much. Like we were talking about technical, until that time, I was always the person who didn't know how to do this, this, and this. But by goodness me, I was doing websites. I was doing, I really Zoom, obviously. So I started to use social media to the BBO's advantage. I grew the membership by 37% during COVID. And I spent my time listening to people and their stories and they were all helping each other. We ended up having wonderful counselling sessions I started the counselling thing for students just to talk to them. And I generally started to think, there's something here I'm just about to stumble over. And at that time as well, I'm, incredibly good friends with Brandon Lawrence, and I persuaded him to do one of our BBO dance teaching qualifications during COVID because I said to him, as you're sitting there, you might as well do something.
I know Brandon. Such a lovely young man.
Absolutely, and he and I have been very, very close since because he's a BBO student like me. I got him to be I asked him to be patron of BBO, and basically we've been best of friends ever since. And he did this teaching qualification. He got distinction, and he said it was just brilliant that he'd done it. So that was a friendship that was truly cemented. And we did various things together during COVID for BBO, like some choreographic competitions to help mental well-being, all that kind of thing. For students. So that was all really, really good. And then we were sort of coming towards the end of COVID, and I suddenly I was literally driving. I remember exactly when it was. I was driving down a road and I pulled into a lay-by and I rang him and I said, Brandon, I've had this idea. And he said, do you want to talk? And I said, yes. And I sat 20 minutes in the lay-by saying, we have to help these vocational graduates. And one of the reasons I'd realised it was my daughter Amy was doing a degree at that time in liberal arts, and watching her and what she was basically going through made me realise that vocational dance graduates were literally missing out on their training, their support network, and just the glut at the end of dancers and no jobs was going to be absolutely catastrophic. So Brandon and I went down to Birmingham. We spent 5 hours in a coffee shop, and I will show you this. I have this book, and this book I started writing this book in August 21. And everything about Grad Pro is in here.
Really?
We sat down. We had no idea really where it was going, and I genuinely mean this. It has snowballed.
Wow. Well, I see. I mean, I only see on LinkedIn what you're doing, and it's amazing. I really think, and it's so needed because, like you say, during lockdown, people started realizing, and we became more aware of certain things. And I think for dancers, I think dancers really struggled during that time because, like you say, it's where to now. And I spoke to a few ballet directors also, and who said, that the audition process stopped suddenly, so where do they go, And even here in Vienna with the musicians, it was like, okay, so we're in lockdown so we can practice, but for what, So it's that idea.
Well, what we decided to do, though, this was actually very, very instrumental in its success, really. Brandon said, what I love about Brandon is we have to do everything stage by stage, layer by layer. He's absolutely right. I'm like, and I have to stick on me, but we get there together. So he said, first thing we have to do is we have to get all of the ballet companies on our side with it. But we have to see if they're all on side. So between us, we contacted some artistic mentors. For example, Sean Bates, Dominic North, Bethany Kingsley Garner. We originally had Claire Calvert, Alistair Campbell, and then obviously Brandon and Shira Robinson. So we had various anyway, we all came together on a Zoom. I explained that we needed to do something. And Brandon and I were adamant at the beginning that it was not going to be a competition. It was a performance opportunity. And although we do award money and things, it's not like a competition like that. And really, the first year was literally we were doing it as we went along. And we learned so much the first year. I mean, when I look back now and think, oh my goodness, it was fine, but you learn. Yeah. And one of the main things all through is I've asked for feedback, and I want people to tell me where it's going wrong, because there's no point in getting it wrong. The first year we decided to do 4 regional events in February of half term, and this is the format we followed. And we did those in Scotland, in Leeds, in Birmingham, and London. And the idea was that the grads didn't have to all go to London, or everyone was able to use their venue. And they went there and they learn a class, and they bring a choreographic solo that they've done themselves. So that first year, we had 54 enter, and there was no stipulation at all. They just had to be either about to graduate, or they were in the mass quagmire of people who'd basically not managed to finish during COVID. So we ended up with a final of 14 graduates, some of which had been graduated for 3 years, but had literally kept themselves going so that they were still hungry for a job. And we held the final at Elmhurst in the theatre. And I had Kenny Tyndall, Dominic Antonucci, and Gail Monaghan, who is the wife of James, who was my director at the Royal Ballet School, and she was the first person to give me £1,000, and that's now become the not the prize, but the award that the winner. I keep saying winner and all this, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah.
And the first year, the winner, Paige McGillicott, I got slightly obsessed by the fact that I wanted this girl to get a job. And it became it basically encompassed me too. I really now have to step back, because I would take every one of these students and physically get them a job if I could, and I just can't do that. And one of the things I also did was I made sure that anyone who didn't get to the final, I gave them sort of feedback from the judges, and I did Zooms with them. And I mean, a true story is one girl had not put on a leotard for 18 months during COVID. I was absolutely terrified to even come back in class, and she did it. She's now leading her own company, youth dance company in Newcastle on Tyne. And I'm just, those kind of things, you think you may never have had the confidence to do anything. So that was the first year. Second year, I managed to get a lot of funding because everyone started talking about it. And I had a very, very generous donation from the Lee Family Foundation, which basically meant I could run it the second year without worrying about it, if that made sense.
Yeah.
And the London Ballet Circle were also involved the first year. Susan has been extremely generous. And their sort of award has almost become a second prize. And Dances, who Sam Carney, who's the artistic director, I've got to put that in everything, the managing director of Dances. She's become, well, her and her husband have become very, very dear friends. And her husband Mark has done my website for me and helps me. And basically is so generous with all the Dances, and obviously Brandon's involved with Dances as well. So it's been amazing. And I've also had an incredible fortune to through Brandon to meet Drew Tommins, who's been my photographer, because the photographs are to die for. And you can't have a product without good photography.
It's so important. But you know what, I love that it's so you say it's not a competition, because isn't it so important that these dancers, because I think ballet dancers are always under this constant stresses, if my technique is good enough, or if and then I almost feel as if the artistry gets lost in the process, and that sometimes you want, as an audience member, you want to go in the theater and you want to enjoy, and you don't want to see that anxiety or that sort of stress that the dancers sometimes have. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm just saying that that there is a lot of pressure on these young dancers.
Well, the main thing with Grad Pro is that my ethos. Well, our ethos, but is basically integrity, support, mentoring. Not one of those grads that comes into Grad Pro each year will ever feel alone. I have kept in touch with pretty much, I would say, 75% of everyone who's ever done it. They feel that they can come back and talk to me. And actually, I absolutely love that. I love the fact I'm very happy to pick up the phone to somebody who was 2 years ago. And, Grad Pro is getting traction. People are, it started to form itself into what people want to do. So I've already got people saying, "Oh, I'm doing Grad Pro 25." So it was just, it's such a dream come true that people are actually putting that in their diaries, which is really nice. And what I've done recently, sorry, I'm talking loads. You just told me to be quiet.
I love it. No, I love it. It's so interesting.
The very first year I said to Brandon, I'm going to do a summer intensive because I thought it'd be really good to do something as well. And he said, if you get 10, do it, but don't do it for under 10. It's like, I got 10, so we did it. The following year, we got 24. Wow. And this year we have 27. And they're all from, I've even got a boy from the Royal Ballet School coming. So, and Brandon's coming over to teach that, which is wonderful. I got Morgan Monica Temple coming to do choreography. And then what happened then was I decided in January that I would like to start doing all of this without having a job.
Oh, yeah.
But without that organizational pressure. So I took the big step, and I decided after 8.5 years at BBO, I wanted to do this. It was my time to do this. So I left BBO in January, and what I've started to do, and I've had a strategic plan all along, but I've started to do an associate scheme in Birmingham and one in Leeds, which is called Your Next Step.
Okay.
So I'm trying to keep this sort of like, because grad pro, Your Next Step.
Yeah.
And then I also decided that I was going to take the plunge, and I wanted to do a pre-professional course as a transition course, but with all the whole mission statement. It needs to be giving students everything that I value myself. I've got an incredible team around me now. I have people who, you know, as I was saying to my husband, actually, it was funny this year at the final. It was like everyone knew they were doing their jobs,
Really?
and it was wonderful. So I've actually I signed yesterday on the studio hire, and I'm actually going to do it. So I'm doing a pre-professional course from September to December. I have been given funding for a week touring at the end of it. So I'm going to have a small company, like the group touring. And it's called G to P, so grad to pro.
Wow.
And then the other thing that's come out of it is at the end of the second final, each year there's like 4 award winners. And I asked the 4 award winners if they'd come on a Zoom with me. And I just said to them, right, how can I make grad pro better? What would you have liked alongside the money? Because the money was actually the only thing I was giving them. Well, that's wrong. I was giving them a lot more than that. But and they said, and it was the guys that said this, we would have liked experience in the companies. We would have liked a week.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, okay. So I made one phone call, and then I spoke to Kevin O'Hare, and I said, could I have a week at Royal Ballet? Absolutely, 100% Royal Ballet Company.
Wow.
Brilliant. Dominic Antonucci, of course you can. So I ended up with Royal, BRB, New Adventures, Northern. And then I thought, Brandon's now in Ballet Zurich. So I contacted Florian, who is Kathy's rehearsal director, and said, I don't suppose. And he said, absolutely. So
how amazing.
5 award winners got placements with those companies. And actually, Eileen's finished hers with BRB, Hannah's done hers with Royal, and Leo's done his with Northern Ballet. And they've absolutely loved it.
And it's so important that they get that, that they have sort of an insight into what it's like, because maybe it's also something that they, when you get to a company and it's not really what you want, or it's not really what you expected.
What was interesting with the 14 finalists is that I told them that there were the 5 options, and obviously we didn't know who was going to get the awards. And when they wrote down the top 3, so when we had, and my judges, I have to tell you who my judges were this time. So I had Mark Baldwin, I had Cynthia Harvey, I had Zenaida Janowski, I had Sir David Bentley, and I nearly had Matutsi November, but he was actually had to go to Cape Town, and Gail, who was my resident judge, and I actually looked at the panel and thought, I've got my own Genée.
Yeah.
And yes, so it's
how amazing.
Yeah. So I'm sort of in the middle now of making sure that I'm keep having Brandon in my ear going, take it layer by layer.
But Julie, but everybody is so supportive, because I think everybody can see the need for it, and everybody can see the positive outcome. But something very interesting, I spoke to a dancer from South Africa yesterday, And he was saying that when he was younger, he had this idea of, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to a dance company, and I want to be in a dance company. And then suddenly, when he was in the dance company, he suddenly realized, no, but it's not where I want to be. I want to do my own thing. I want to create. I want to go back to South Africa. I want to give back, and I want to do things there. And isn't it also important for these dancers, these young dancers coming from the training, to understand that you don't necessarily have to be in a company. You can also create, because it's also what we need, isn't it? These young creators.
No, absolutely. I mean, in fact, one thing, going back to you, I was talking about transferable skills. One of the main things that I'm going to do with these graduates that are coming to do the course, each of them is going to have a one-to-one mentor who is in a company. We're
nice.
going to make sure that the dancers choose the right solos for their auditions, that they are not trying ridiculous companies that they will not get into, because that is just silly, because they'll just get rejection, and that's no good for anybody. And I'm looking also at things like there's one particular young lady coming who loves costume design. And I've talked to Sam at Dances, and she's really keen that we start having our own grad pro dancewear. And Tori, who's coming on the course, I spoke to her, and she's absolutely beside herself that she can actually start to think about that. And I said to her, you can help with the tour, with the costuming, and then I will encourage the others to, if they want to help with, even if it's as well as dancing, they can still be interested in how you said at the beginning, the lighting, the stage management, everything like that. And they leave the course at the end of December, well, just before Christmas, knowing there is something else that they can think.
Exactly, yeah. Because isn't it also part of the whole art form, that everything, the costumes, everything, the lighting, everything helps to tell the story. So, it's important to understand that.
I think also it's very interesting as well. I think one of the reasons why I've had so much support with Grad Pro in all different areas is because I said to you at the beginning, I took an interest in everybody's jobs. And I think now I have a need for those people. It's come full circle round, and they're really, I have people who say, oh, I've got a friend who'll do that. And I think that is so important. It's that old saying, isn't it? In just be kind to everybody on the way up.
Exactly, yeah. No, but it's true. Yeah. And it's also, I think it also inspires, I think the more you, because sometimes I speak to artists, and then they talk about collaborations, and then you sort of understand that some of these, they learn from each other, they bounce off each other, so it's sometimes so important for young people to not be so, narrow-minded in what they're doing, but also open up and see what's around them.
I think one of my greatest sort of, what's the word? I was so the word is chuffed, actually. So Ivan Petrov was a judge last year, and this year became a mentor. And I have great admiration for what he's done for dance, for Ukraine, for everything. And he came up to me just before he'd coached two of the students. Oh, that was the other thing, is that these mentors actually coach the 14 finalists. So they get coached on their choreography solo, and they also choose a repertoire solo. So they have a professional dancer helping them, which is, again, is lovely. Anyway, Ivan came to the final to watch, and he came up to me with a small bag in his hand, and he said, "This is a little present for you. My dear, you're changing lives in a really good way." And I just thought, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
But I spoke to a young dancer, Kennedy. Now I can't remember his surname, but he comes from Africa. In the UK, he didn't have his parents couldn't afford him dance lessons, but he trained and he trained at school and now he's a choreographer and a dancer as well. But he said he used to go on YouTube and learn from what other choreographers did and learn the history. I mean, you talked about learning the history or the lives of other dancers that came before. And he was so adamant that he said that's the missing link in the dance industry, is that dancers don't have mentors. And now this is what you're providing. This is exactly what he said, somebody to look up to, somebody to listen to, somebody to talk to hear their story, because he feels that you build on the legacy that they left behind. And it's so important to learn from them.
Well, a little bit with what I said before about, having Mona Vanksar as my teacher, I was a direct link there to Bournonville. And one of my real greatest moments was just about 2 months before I finished dancing. I did that. I would get myself completely fit, and then Monica Mason teach me, coach me one-to-one in this tiny room at the Royal Ballet School that was always called. You always knew you were there if you were injured. And I remember her teaching me, and oh my goodness, I learned so much, and I can still hear her talking and what she said, and I've passed on those things to people. You can't ever take that away from anything.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have, and especially I think younger dancers, they need that, because it's something to aspire to, or it's something to just to understand what is the path, because it's also people, I think young people look at other dancers and think it just happened suddenly, and there's a path, and there's also a struggle, isn't it, and obstacles that they had to overcome. So these mentorships, I think it's wonderful that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's, as I say, fingers crossed. It's all going okay, and the book's getting written.
Wow. But I think also for dancers, in the career, to give some of that, I think it would be wonderful for them to talk about that.
Well, to be honest with you, I spent a lot of time thinking nobody wanted to listen to my story, and actually, when I did start to sort of mention bits, people are like, well, "Why don't you talk about it?" And it's not because I don't want to. It's because I think, oh, nobody's bothered about that. They are. And I mean, I was interviewed by London Ballet Circle early on in the year, and actually Brandon did my interview, which was great. We kept forgetting there were people there, and when I sort of heard it back, I thought, actually, it is quite interesting. It's quite boring. Nice. Yeah.
No, definitely. And it's also, I think, also important for dancers to see, because there is a time frame to their career, to know what can I give back when I finish dancing. There's so much to give back, or there's so much to still create, like you are doing. So it's not just the dancing part, it's that after part that you are now offering.
Yeah, and I suppose really it was quite well summed up, because it's one of the very first grad pro regional entries, and she didn't get through to the final. She came back the second year, and she didn't get through to the final. And she is an exquisite dancer, and she came to both of my summer intensive. And last summer, at the end of the summer intensive, she came up to me. I said, so what's the plan, Laura? And she said, no word of a lie, I want to be a Julie. And I said, oh? And she said, I want to do what you're doing. Anyway, I didn't forget it. And I thought about it. Anyway, she's now part of the team. She's helping with Grad Pro. She helped with the final.
Amazing.
She's now on the team to help me at the pre-professional. She's learning, and it's the biggest compliment I've ever had.
I can imagine. Yeah. No, definitely.
So I don't know. I don't know what's next.
Really, this is amazing. No, really. I mean, I saw and I read a little bit about what you do, but it's amazing to talk to you and hear the whole story. It's
Thank you.
wonderful. Yeah. No, I just think it's you're doing such great work.
I hope it's, I mean, I think the main thing is, if I've helped guide or I've helped something happen to somebody that they really wanted to happen, you know, or given opportunity is the word. I think you can't change people's lives, but you can put them in the right place at the right time.
And you know, it's like it's the training part, and you know, they so full on there at the school and doing it, and then it's okay. Now I have to get a contract. Now I have to go out there, and it's then I think that's where they lose hope, or when it doesn't work out, because like you say, there's not so many jobs available, but at least you have that somebody to hold your hand just in that transition time.
Yeah.
So that it's not all lost, you know. So no, Julie, wonderful.
Thank you. It's been really lovely to talk to you. I'm really sorry about last week, but obviously.
No, that's fine. But tell me now, what are the wishes? Where do you see Grad Pro going?
Okay. I can now see it as a brand, and that is something I never sort of thought of at the beginning. There is a brand, and you know, if we can have a dancewear brand as well, and I think these offshoots, the idea of the offshoots are to give, you know, 11-year-olds to start to look to Grad Pro, so that they start to think about those values, and I think that's what I want to do. I also am sort of looking at, so what's happened now is that the because all the sort of pool of COVID, the COVID pile has disseminated a little bit. It's what's happened now by natural progression is that the second years, at the end of second years of vocational, they're coming to the summer intensive. The third years are coming to the Grad Pro thing, and then hopefully the third years will come onto the pre-professional course. So the idea is then to feed in from the associate scheme into the vocational, and then the other thing is just to look after those about to go to vocational school and those who've done a first year. So I'm currently looking at ultimate, my own company, but not a company like everybody else is. A transition company.
Amazing idea. I love that, and I think it's needed. Yeah, definitely.
I just need to find.
I'm going to.
See the Euro.
Definitely, you have to do it. Yeah.
Or some wonderful. But I mean, look, I'll try anything. But if I could get somebody to invest, it would be amazing. But will get there. I just.
Julie, you will do it. I'm 100% sure you will do it. After listening to you, there's no doubt in my mind. That will be our next interview.
Excellent. Okay, I look forward to that.
No, I'm absolutely sure that's going to happen. Yeah, now you've got absolutely the drive. You're the right person for it, because I think you understand the need, and it's I always say when you do the thing you're supposed to do, that then you go into your flow, and you've gone into your flow now.
It's like plugging that electric plug into the socket.
Yeah. Yeah. No, wonderful. Julie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for telling your story. It's amazing. And
It's been lovely. Thank you, Petra.
And it's lovely to be able to see what you're doing on LinkedIn.
I must remember LinkedIn because I tend to go, I have to think, I must put it there because it's important.
But are you on Instagram as well?
Yes,
I'm going to follow you on Instagram.
I'm on at Julie Bowers, and I'm on as Grad Pro as well. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll follow you there.